The Entrepreneurial Journey podcast. We're talking business and building a culture that's kick-ass. Where we make it happen, grab your seat, let's have a blast. At the Entrepreneurial Journey podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey podcast. Today I have Rob Simpson with me, who is an inventor. Rob, what have you invented?
Hello, Rebecca. Hope you're very well. I've invented a number of door security devices. One of them, which was actually licensed, manufactured, and is now used by police throughout the UK in specific applications. Another one has just been licensed to a company based over in Hainault, whose name is Premier Fire and Security SSL, which is going to be an embedded forensic door alarm.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay. I don't think I've interviewed an inventor yet. And I was watching a clip of the program on TV last night about James Dyson and his thousands and thousands of prototypes. So how did you get started? And what was that kind of journey from initial idea to, oh, I've got something I can show you and you can use it now? What was that like? So how did you get started, first of all?
Well, I'm going to need to go back. So how long have you got?
Well,
in a condensed version. I mean, I'm registered disabled. I was involved in a serious road traffic accident back in 1998.
Oh, that's not good. I'm sorry to hear that.
You didn't pull out in front of me. It was not your fault. So I was left with a serious spinal condition and left unable to walk. So I was sitting in me or laying in my front room, watching a lot of television. And my background is in the telecommunications industry. I was what was called a car telephone engineer for 14 years. I used to travel around the country fitting mobile phones into people's cars. But after the accident, I watched a lot of television. And I watched an episode of The Bill on UK Gold, and the scene depicted an elderly lady answering a call at her front door. Mm-hmm. And on approaching the front door, she did all what crime prevention handbooks tell you to do and securely fastened her door security chain. On opening the front door with one swift kick, the fixings were ripped from the chain. That caller became an intruder and assaulted the woman in her own home. Yeah. At that point, I thought, oh, and I looked up at a doorway entrance in my house, and an idea popped into my head. And I drafted a quick sketch, and I spoke to a friend of mine who was an alarm engineer. We discussed ways of making it work through items that were available on the market back then. So we are talking, pre-internet. So you weren't able to go onto Google to find out your parts and where they could come from and where they could be sourced. So it was a very long and arduous process. I ended up filing my first patent application in 2001. That patent was granted later in 2006, but the obstacle that I've had to overcome is I was inspired and an idea popped into my head, but the component parts to actually make it work hadn't even been developed at that point.
Oh my goodness.
It's very difficult. It's like I've been called the Gene Roddenberry of forensic alarms.
I don't know who Gene Roddenberry is.
He's the guy who used to write Star Trek back in the day. So with the old Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner.
Yeah.
So if you think about those programs you used to watch as a child, and
I did.
See, yeah, you did. So you saw Uhura with her Bluetooth headset.
I did.
And her translator, and you saw Spock using a tablet, and you saw Captain Kirk using his flip phone as communicator.
Yes.
These items hadn't been invented, but they were later on.
Yeah. Wow.
So we've now gone down the route, whereas items are now available. You just have to look at the camera on the back of your mobile phone. You can realize that the recording capabilities are there. Forensic deployment is now there. You've got two companies in the UK that are, governed by the Forensic Science Service. I've partnered with one of those organizations, and we're currently in the process of R&Ding and developing. I did actually make was inspired by a product in the early, is in the noughties. It was
right.
It was about 2009-10, and it was a handheld personal attack alarm, which had a DNA capability, and it was supplied to nurses on the National Health Service for when they were walking to their cars or dimly lit areas, and it had a 130 decibel alarm and a spraying mechanism which would spray the attacker with a forensic marking fluid so he could be identified up to 3 months later. And I held this handheld device. And again, I had an idea pop into my head. I've got one here I can show you.
Oh, yeah, do, please.
So what you've got, I'll just very quickly piece it together. This is a door security chain manufactured by ERA.
Okay.
This is a chassis which fits to your door frame.
Right.
And this here is a forensic alarm. And so you would handheld it like so. It's compressurized. On the base of the canister, I don't know if you can see this, there's a barcode with a code there. That code is registered to the user. So in the event of she having to activate it and spray somebody, the police using UV technology, UV light sources, UV torches, or they actually use black suites now in some custody areas. So they would go around to the usual suspects or any suspect, and if they actually held a UV light source over them, very quickly I can show you here.
Yeah.
As you can see, I look quite normal, but
you do look normal. Yes, you do.
If you start holding a UV light source onto me, now they would actually take a swab of that, and it would come back to that can who is registered to. You were the person that attacked that woman. So I've actually taken that and invented this, which sits the canister in. It sits sits on your door, front door, back door, patio door.
Right.
And in the event of an individual attempting to force entry into your home, they'll set off 130 decibel alarm and spray themselves in forensic marking fluid.
That's now the
alarm notifies neighbours that you've got problems at your doors. So I'm thinking at that point now, once the alarm's been raised, they'll have it away on their toes, but they've been sprayed in this forensic marking fluid, which sticks to them for up to 3 months.
My God.
So you can't see it on clothes. You can't see it on your skin. It's totally invisible to the naked eye. But if I went into a nightclub tonight, for argument's sake, I'd look like Papa Smurf.
Right. So you regular go to nightclubs, Rob?
Oh, back in the day, but not anymore. My back won't.
No, neither can I. And I wasn't in a car accident. So, okay, right. This is genius. This is absolute genius. So I'm going to ask this. When you were out and about doing your telecoms engineering thing, were you the sort of person who had loads of ideas all the time anyway?
Yes.
Right.
I was actually working. I mean, I started in 1987, and this is when a mobile phone was cost you £2,500 to have supplied and fitted.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm going to cough.
All right.
Excuse me. So I was used to just travel around the country fitting mobile phones, and I was inspired, like smart brackets, for argument's sake. Instead of like taking a Rolls Royce or a Jaguar or a Mercedes and drilling holes into the dashboard to mount the handset, I used to bend around pieces of metal. And form them after taking the center console out, form them, and then mount the phone onto that, so that when the phone was taken out of that car, you wouldn't have any damage in the front. But about a couple of years later, there was a company source called Smart Brackets, and you used to give them the make and the model of the car, and they used to send them to you. So that was good. Also, I had a hand in audio mutes. So, you know, when you're in your car and you've got Bluetooth now that governs your stereo. So when you receive a call, I know you shouldn't be using a mobile whilst driving. So you've got Bluetooth, you hit your button on your steering wheel and you can talk hands-free. Yeah. Well, before then, you didn't have that option. There was no hands-free. It was pick the handset up and just drive along and use it. There was no laws governing the use thereof. So hands-free microphones, audio mutes, and it was just... it was being inspired. I never did anything about it. I just, oh, that's a good idea. They're actually making them now. So I didn't actually think, I'm going to go away and start a company that makes these brackets so you can install into cars, or I'm not going to make these wiring harnesses that audio mutes the stereo and, you can carry. It was just, I was too busy earning quite a lot of money doing the job I was doing. And I wasn't focused enough to think, oh, I'll tell you what I should do. I'll get home tonight and I'll file a patent application.
Yeah, because the dates you just shared with me about the filing the patent and then getting it, was that 5 years, 5 or 6 years it took?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, it's patent applied for, funnily enough, in the UK, but I've actually patented it in the United States, China, Japan, Australia, South Africa. So the intellectual property rights regarding the deployment of a forensic marking fluid located at an entry point, which is activated via a definitive attempt to force unlawful entry, RDS Innovations retains the intellectual property for prior art and copyright.
Brilliant.
So,
Brilliant.
and it took a hell of a lot to get there. And it wasn't for, friends and family who've assisted me, because as you can imagine, after suffering a car accident, I had no living.
Yeah.
So the funds available to actually make these things work, file patent applications, speak to intellectual property attorneys, go to meetings, prototyping. It was very, very difficult to do, but we got there in the end.
That's amazing. That is amazing, that tenacity to keep going. Because even with funds, it's not easy, but relying on family and friends to do that is massive. Now you have a really superb product, and imagine somewhere like South Africa, which has a very high crime rate. This is great. How are you getting it out to market?
It's a great product as long as you've got the capability to identify forensic marking fluid.
Right.
So,
okay.
in some, the devices have been sent to South Africa, but the alarm only versions. I've got devices in some parts of the United States of America, Australia, and these have just been posted across because, I saw a story, or I entered into a conversation and sent them out there, just for people to use them more than anything else, but to protect themselves because they've been a victim of crime.
Right.
I have sent units out and gone to meetings with large organisations, but it's because of the forensic trace technology. You need to have the police on board, and the police with the capabilities to identify it. At its most basic, it's a noisy door chain.
Yeah.
The noise will make someone have it away on their toes. But having the forensic trace capabilities, I've found police forces in the United Kingdom. I've been dealing with domestic violence units, honour-based violence units, repeat victims of burglary, the more vulnerable members of society. We've got hundreds of devices throughout the UK, including Wales. You've got devices in Scotland, up and down the UK. I don't think there's anything in Northern Ireland at the moment.
Right.
But they're in specific applications. But ideally, I'd like to be selling them through the likes of B&Q, Homebase, Carrefour in France, and the forensic trace capabilities will be provided by a third party. So we're actually developing a device now that can receive a forensic trace provider's forensic trace, and but in the UK it would need professional installation, because you need to be required for the Crown Prosecution Service for chain of evidence.
I see.
So it sounds really good and it sounds really easy, but it's not.
Yeah, no, that's business though, isn't it, Rob? People look at things and go, oh, that's a brilliant idea. I could do that. How hard could it be? And then when you get into it, you're like,
you're looking at
it. This is really hard. This is so hard.
It is.
Why did I start?
But no, I've never had that. Funnily enough,
At
the end of the day, I've had sometimes where you sort of like, it's 4 steps forward and 3 steps back.
Yeah.
There is progression there, but it's taking far longer than I expected that it would. I was very naive when I got into it. I used to think that people sat at the intellectual property office looking for good ideas and passing that information on. How wrong was I?
Yeah.
And because you didn't have the internet, I keep on banging on about it, but back in 1999. You didn't have email addresses. You couldn't contact. I was writing to, the managing directors of the likes of ADT and Chubb, and never getting a response. And it's all of a sudden you've got an email address, and you think to yourself, well, hold on a minute, I'll just have a go. And then you've got LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great resource. I wouldn't have got in contact with Premier Fire and Security if it wasn't for LinkedIn and a video that I posted, and this guy saying, well, that's a good idea.
Yes. Do you know, I am astounded at the number of business owners who complain about LinkedIn. I'm like, this is a resource like no other. I was in recruitment for 15 years. When I set my recruitment business up, again, no internet. I had to go through the yellow pages starting at A. And people now just like, oh, LinkedIn's a pain. I'm like, no, this is manna from heaven for people like us who started way back before the internet. This is just gold dust.
Oh yeah,
that's
big
fantastic. Time. I'm really glad. And you mentioned domestic violence units. I'm a trustee of the Women's Fund for Scotland, and some of the grassroots.
Bless you.
Some of the grassroots organisations we fund are for women and families escaping domestic abuse. So, I'm right up for that. And so sadly, when you're talking about intruders, you talked about men. and often attacking women and other vulnerable people. And that is the sad truth of the matter.
I know. It's disgusting.
Yeah, it is. So it's really nice to hear that there's something there that can help people feel safe and deter those kind of intruders and abusers.
Well, that's the whole idea of the product.
Which is phenomenal. And I love that. So you've got a kind heart. You want to do something good. How, where are you taking it? How's it going, basically? Are you making the kind of progress you want to make?
Again, I'm making the progress I want to make, but it's not done in a fast fashion, which, I would, being naive about this, you think to yourself, A to B to C to D.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work like that. But I was lucky enough. I've been in contact with Innovate UK Edge, which is part of the DTI. And my guy Neville Snell, big shout out to Neville Snell.
Go Neville.
He's top man, and we're now going through the process. And I'm now working with the MTC, which is a manufacturing technology centre in Coventry. And Selector DNA, who are providing the forensics. We are making a device for a 5,000 short run, which we will be attempting to sell through the sheds here in the UK, with the forensic trace being provided by them as an after-sale capability. Fantastic. But I've already got the thing that gets me is I've already got sales established.
Yeah.
To domestic violence units.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like the idea of the product itself. I mean, when I first had the idea, it was just like, it's an anti-burglary device. But then you get introduced to the applications and what it gets used for, and it was a big eye opener for me. I mean, I've never met anyone apart from yourself and some other people that I've met through. This is previous 2009 that had ever been a victim of domestic violence, and listening to the stories that the police officers are telling me, Stephen King, he couldn't come up with ideas like that for a book or a film. Honestly, I went grey overnight with with a couple of the stories that I've heard, and it is absolutely disgusting. Now, if I can do something to ease the fear, and I've actually seen it work, so I've seen an actual terrified female with 2 kids, and he's been given an abatement order. And you can guarantee that I was guaranteed there was absolutely no way she'd be able to give evidence against him in a court of law. Because he's got family around him, and she would be gotten to, and it's just like
too scared.
Wow. Yeah,
too scared.
So once I explained to her that as long as you use this device, if he decides to come round, he's got a barrier to bypass, and if he tries to bypass this barrier, he's going to get sprayed. So I will stand in court, and I will put him at that crime scene, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
And you could see it was like a millstone being lifted off her neck. She went off and made me a bacon sandwich and made me a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, that is incredible. I'm so glad you've got that route to market set up, and the package around it with the DNA identifiers, forensics identifiers, which is fantastic, which means that a lot more women and families can feel safer in their own homes.
Yeah.
That is so important. And
this device was inspired from the electronic. I mean, my original idea is a bar that goes across the top of a door. So if you think of a bar across the top of the door with an L-shaped bar across the opening leaf.
Yeah.
So in the event of you walking towards your front door, the L-shaped bar moves around 90 degrees. So it inhibits door opening to the same degree as a door security chain.
Okay.
And the moment you open the door, that person outside is being recorded. And audio, visual, also using technology like Ring doorbell, you can get a notification that your wife's answered a call at her front door and actually watch it in real time. What's going on. But in the event, again, of somebody attempting to force entry, it'll automatically call the police. It'll download the images that have been taken. It'll send them to police officers, and at the same time, spray the offender with a forensic marking fluid. So you've got this places him at the crime scene, that places at the crime scene, and the forensic trace places him at the crime scene. You're banged to your rights. It's 100% conviction. You can't plead not guilty to it. We've got you. Yeah. Visually, audioly, and audioly. That's such a word.
I don't know. Well, let's stick with that.
Yeah, let's stick with it. Sounded all right. And forensically. So, and this is why the police like it, because they know who the offender is.
Yeah, they do.
And all they need to do is go around with a UV torch, and you're nicked.
Yeah, they need the evidence. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Did you know at TriCrest, we've built a kick-ass culture coach and consultant program? So if you're a business coach or consultant and you're looking for something new, add to your toolbox, or even escape the 9 to 5, join us at our next event. Links in the information on the podcast. See you there.
Sadly, those not just ring doorbells, but those video doorbells are used by abusers to coercively control their partners and monitor where they are and when they've gone out and how long they've been out for.
I can see that from the reverse angle.
Yeah, they are, which is really sad. And again, if you've not ever come across that world, you're like, what? But it's true.
It's cameras in the house as well. You know,
yeah.
I mean, the majority of places I've been sent to, the husband was either going to be released from prison, and they've been moved to a police safe house, and he's just a different world, an absolute different world, and it's shocking. I mean, it opened my eyes, and
it's more common than you think. Sadly, it's more common than you think. So anyway, on to happier things. Yes. You were nominated for I'm going to get this right. You're a finalist for the Great British Entrepreneur Awards 2023, East of England, for innovation.
I was, yes.
And I can't believe you didn't win.
Well, I was saying that some of the other products, when I looked online and I was looking at what I was up against, I was like thinking, that's a good idea.
All right, okay.
You know, so, you know, if I'd have thought that, you know, it was something that was beneath me, I would have kicked off. No, I wouldn't. I'm joking. It's the blokes deserve to win.
Great.
That's it and all about it. I can easily go enter for next year's competition for scale up or innovation again. You know, but do it. I can enter for more criteria based on the progress we're going through with the Innovate UK Edge and the Manufacturing Technology Centre.
You can. I'm so glad you tied up with them. That's great, because they're a fantastic organisation for getting these things off the ground. They really are. I noticed the Great British Entrepreneur Awards had, was it a retirement entrepreneur? And I was thinking,
a couple of years, that'll be me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm 53. What age? I didn't look at the criteria. I don't know how old you have to be, how ancient and decrepit you have to be to apply for that. But I was like, woohoo, there's maybe time for that yet. Because the young one sailed a long time ago, young entrepreneur, that boat definitely is sailed. All right, brilliant. Where are you taking the business, Rob? Where's it heading?
Ideally, I mean, when it comes down to forensic installations, I mean, I'd like to see. I mean, I'd like to keep me hand in, but my disability dictates, what levels I can attend on a daily basis. So, ideally, I'd like to license the intellectual property and to a third party and get a royalty payment, but also assist in consultation moving forward.
Right. Hang on. Right. So you're saying you're not out and about as much as you'd like to be as it grows?
Well, no. I mean, I think, leave it to the professionals, but I'm there for assistance. I with Innovate UK Edge, it's going to be a business development team. Yeah. There's going to be a sales director. I mean, I've had a go at being a sales director, and yes, I got into the police force. When I say get into the police force, I got into supplying the police with forensic alarms. And that's been the main focus. But when it comes to dealing with the likes of B&Q in the UK or Wix or Carrefour in France or Lowe's or Home Depot in America, I'm going to leave that to the professionals. But at the same time, when it comes to forensic alarm installations, there is a criteria that you have to follow with regards to installation processes.
Okay.
Now, 1,000 devices I'd manufactured originally, 998 have been installed and registered throughout the UK. As I said, to majority to domestic violence units who use target hardening organisations run through city councils.
Okay.
I would go to South Wales for argument's sake, and I'd train a couple of guys from Carmarthenshire City Council who would do the target hardens for Duffy Parish Police.
Okay.
And it's the same again for a domestic violence charity in Liverpool, say for St Helens. Again, their guys have got the ability, but they need to do a training course and they need to have a forensic alarm installer code. Right. Now, my one is 001, and there's 224 of these guys up and down the country, and they've just been sitting dormant for a few years because I'm going through the processes. We had COVID,
Yeah.
I mean, and during the domestic violence rate during COVID just went
through the roof.
Big time.
Went through the roof.
Yeah. So it was very difficult for me not to have products, but we're getting back into it. And then you've got these forensic alarm installers. They got to be out there, and they've got to be in the UK, you know, governed by the Crown Prosecution Services and the Forensic Science Services Code of Practice, because we need to be able to show that this device that was manufactured on this day, that was sent out on this day, which was given to this fitter on this day, which was installed at that door, and the forensic was registered. And again, it's not A to B to C to D. It's A to B to C to D to E to F to G to H. And you just got to make sure that every single one of those letters is lined up so that if it ever does go to court, you're covered.
Yeah, absolutely.
But sold through the sheds, it would be a DIY product. And videos online you could watch to go and show you how to install it, what you got to watch out for. I'd like to have a hand in that if I could, using professional actors, not somebody who drops his T's and his P's and his Q's as much as I do, so that a better understanding could be made.
Perfectly articulate, Rob. Have you ever thought about doing Dragon's Den?
I did Dragon's Den.
Did you?
I did Dragon's Den. It didn't go very well. I was on the first series. This was like 2002.
Oh, very early days.
It had never been on the telly before. So when my intellectual property attorney said, there's this new program, it's being aired in the spring, it's called Dragon's Den. I've gone, oh yeah, what's all that about then?
Yeah.
So I went on, and it was at the time of Duncan Bannatyne.
Yeah.
The only thing is that it's just, I say it as I see it, which has probably been one of my downfalls. I'm very, very black and white. So when I explained, I done my spiel, which you heard part of earlier about whilst an elderly lady answered a call at her front door. That was part of my Dragon's Den spiel, which I've got verbatim now. So I explained this and how the device worked. And I won't even attempt to do a Scottish accent, but I'll have a go.
I can't do one. I've lived here 28 years.
Well, Duncan Bannatyne turned around and he's gone, it's going to be a very messy affair. And I've gone, what? So you can imagine this is being filmed. And I've got cameras, I'm cameraed up, all the mic'd up. And I've looked at him like, what? He said, well, if someone's got to come down my house and they're going to be drilling holes across the top, it's going to make a hell of a mess. And I've looked at him, are you all right, mate?
Yeah, have you missed the point?
I said, in England, we got something called a Hoover.
Yeah.
And whilst everybody else was around, was roaring with laughter, Duncan Bannatyne wasn't.
Right.
And then I think he said something else. He said something along the lines of, you know, you can file your own patent. And I've gone, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I said, you can go to Patent House and you can download an application.
Yeah.
And I went, mate, again, I wasn't talking to him as, you know, the multi-millionaire that he was, because I don't care whether you got a pound in your pocket or a million pound in your pocket. You know, what you see is what you get.
Absolutely.
And he said, I said, what are you doing? I said, you know, I used to be a car telephone engineer. I said, you'd ring me up if you'd want your car phone fitted, not your plumbing sorted out. I said, so me, coming from that background, is going to use an expert to draft what I've got in my head, so they put it down on paper and get it done properly. You know, 7 Ps, Duncan, 7 Ps.
Yeah.
Prior planning, preparation, prevents poor performance.
Great.
And didn't swear. But I then started getting antsy, and I started getting sciatica. So, you know, that big brown couch they still have there, I was laying on that.
Right.
And I made some comments or something or other, and everybody started laughing because I was still mic'd up. So I think I ended up on the cutting room floor.
Did you? I'd love to have seen that one.
I've actually asked. I've asked the BBC for a copy, and nah.
No, they're never releasing that. That's probably in the bin somewhere now.
Somewhere, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, bless you. Oh, well, anyway, it's turned out all right in the end. Right. So, and you don't have to share what these ideas are, but do you have other ideas as somebody who's clearly very creative when it comes to inventing stuff? Have you got other things up your sleeve?
I've got other things up my sleeve, but we without a pot to go to actually pay for it. So I'm hopefully once royalties start being generated from these two revenue streams, I'll be able to, you know, go away and work on other ideas. And what two of them aren't even security related.
Okay,
they're just ideas that I've had, because there's loads of people out there. You know, people are watching this program. You at one point or other have had a great idea. It's just you've never done anything about it. You've used a utensil, you've used something in everyday life, and you think to yourself, do you know what? If they did this, and this to that product, it would make it so much more easier to use. And then you carry on with your working day, and by the time you get home, you've forgotten that. But if you'd actually gone, I'm going to write that down as it goes, or I'm going to record that, and I'm going to do something about it, you never know what could happen,
Okay, so Rob, I'm going to very respectfully disagree with you there, because you find that easy. That thought has never crossed my mind.
Hasn't it?
No. And this is what's really interesting about the entrepreneurs I interview. They go, well, yeah, everybody can see that, can't they? And I'm like, no, they can't. So I interviewed Gary from Ogle, who did go on Dragon's Den, actually. And seemed to have behaved himself because he got offered investment, but that's by the by. And he said he'd had loads of ideas about products and seen other people take them to market. And this was an interview I did a few years ago. And he was the same. Well, everybody can see him. I'm like, no, they can't. I have ideas about, so I train business coaches and consultants is what we do. So I have ideas about what I can give them for tools to work with businesses with.
Working experience.
Yeah. And the models and frameworks. And I have ideas about that. And people say to me, well, how do you see that? And I used to go, well, surely everybody sees that, but they don't. And I tell you who does. Did you watch the Schwarzenegger thing on Netflix?
No,
Arnold?
I didn't know.
Well, he talked about how he saw visions really clearly of how things could go and where they could go, and his own vision. And it's like, that's what I do. Now, not everybody does that. And not everybody, Rob, will see an everyday object or thing and go, do you know what? That could be so much better. So you find it easy. The vast majority of the population do not.
Well, I'll take that as read.
Yeah, no, it's true. Right. So if your business had a character or a personality, who would it be, or how would you describe it?
Ooh. Good question. Don't really have an answer for that.
Right.
A personality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a personality who's. You're not the first person to say that I've tenacity. So yeah. I don't know what sort of character is there that doesn't take things lying down and just gets on with it.
Yeah, I think that's a good enough description. Tenacity is the thing that shines through. You have just gone, we're doing this, nothing's stopping me, and I'm just going to keep going till it's done.
Exactly.
Yeah, brilliant. And whilst a lot of the business owners I interview don't select that characteristic, that's the common thread. It's you just keep going.
If at first you don't succeed, try again.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Well, listen, I wish you all the success in the world with this, Rob, because it's a much needed product.
Well, thank you very much.
Make people feel safe. It potentially will save lives, I think.
Oh, the Mark 1 version definitely has. I mean, and as I said to you, meeting these women, I've never met a man, to be quite honest. Women of violence who've they've been subjected to unspeakable things. So it shouldn't happen. And if I can actually go by easing their fear, then happy days.
Yeah, job's a good one. Brilliant. Amazing. Thank you so much today.
No
really
problems at all. It's been very nice speaking to you. Thanks for giving me your time.
I had the absolute pleasure and delight to interview Tara Lynch, who runs a doggy daycare business and has huge plans to create kind of a dog daycare nursery, walking facility, all kinds of things. Now, the amazing thing about Tara, well, it's not that amazing actually, is that she's in her early 20s and she's really ambitious for a business. I think if there's anybody out there who's thinking about starting a business, listen to Tara. She's got some wise words. She's got some really interesting insights and some really good advice that we could all do with following. Plus, it's about dogs. So what's not to love? Tune in.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Did you know at TriCrest we've built a kick-ass culture coach and consultant program? So if you're a business coach or consultant and you're looking for something new, add to your toolbox, or even escape the 9 to 5, join us at our next event. Links in the information on the podcast. See you there.
The Entrepreneurial Journey podcast. We're talking business and building a culture that's kick-ass. Where we make it happen. Grab your seat, let's have